And we're back, and we're going to continue the conversation with our Chief Operating Officer, Dan Shapiro, and a Senior Sales Executive at Accenture, Emma McGuigan, who will share their perspectives on this new era, the power of AI, and how their organizations are doubling down on deep sales and seeing a massive impact. So I'm going to pass it over to my good friend, Erin Matherin, Director of Global Accounts here at LinkedIn. She will lead the discussion. Erin, I'm passing the baton to you.
Thanks, Sahar. Hi, everyone. I'm Erin Matherin, and I lead the Global Accounts Organization for North America for LinkedIn Sales Solutions business. Welcome, Emma and Dan. So, Dan, you know this, but a well-honored tradition that we have here at LinkedIn is to ask people what's not on your LinkedIn profile. So I'll start, and then Dan, I'll ask you to start, and then Emma share. So for me, what's not on my LinkedIn profile is that I'm learning how to play the piano keyboard for the first time. And my husband is actually helping to teach me. Now,
wait, Erin, what song, you have a song that you're learning that you're excited about?
So I have very junior songs that I'm learning right now. So Wheels on the Bus is where I am. But I'm hoping to get to my husband's level where he's playing for Elise.
Okay. I love Wheels on the Bus,
yes.
So anytime.
Starting baby steps.
For me, well, I have a number of children that are middle school and getting into high school age, and my family activity that we love to do is scuba diving. And so it's been really exciting to have my kids get to an age where they can embrace scuba diving. And suffice to say, it's important to our family. It was the one requirement that my partner, Mary, asked of me before we got married. She's like, if we're gonna be married, you need to officially commit to learning how to scuba dive. And it's become this family thing that we all enjoy doing together.
Exciting.
Well, that's brilliant. I have a similar family activity, only I'm the one that made the insistence that my husband had to learn skiing.
Okay.
He rejected skiing and instead we learned snowboarding. But skiing and snowboarding is such, it's the thing my family, I have 3 teenagers, we all do together and we love it.
Love that.
I love that. So now that the audience has gotten a chance to learn a bit more about you, I'd love to transition and ask you some of your perspectives on the state of sales. So as you think about the era of selling today, how would you describe it for how sellers are selling today?
Well, I think it's an interesting word you use there, an era, because era is something we associate with a generation or, a decade or two. And actually, if you think about just the last 5 years and the level of disruption, Accenture has this disruption index that we measure. And if you go back to 2016, the disruption index was 4%. And for the last 3 years, it's been at over 200%. Wow. And if you think about that, the era that we're in is the era of agility, because actually what's happening in sales is what people are buying is changing so rapidly. One minute they want to buy transformation and really thinking about the value. And I think the value is the thing that is key. At the moment, we're in a lot of cost constraint. And so it's a different, where the value is, which means sellers have to work a bit harder. But it's that need to be agile that I think is really leading at the moment in terms of where sellers need to be.
Yeah, love that. Agility, cost conscious, all of those things playing in. Dan.
Well, I love what you said, Emma, around value. I think that sales is all about value. It's about helping a customer understand a challenge they're having. It's about helping them see a solution that perhaps they haven't considered before. And it's about helping them galvanize their team to make the situation better by doing something differently. And what's interesting is we talk at LinkedIn about this idea of the era of deep sales, and it's a juxtaposition of the last 10 years. The last 10 years, so much of sales has gotten focused on shallow selling, sending more messages to more people, hoping that someone will get back to you. And I think that while results in the short term may have increased for some organizations, what it's meant is a huge reduction in responsiveness of customers. And they've really started to treat sellers as not someone who's bringing value to the table. So what I like to think about a future that I think is aspirational is this idea of selling is going to get back to building deep relationships with customers again. How do you actually understand what the customer cares about? How do you help them see their problem more clearly than they've really maybe saw on their own? And then how do you build relationships across different parts of the organization to help them unlock that solution? And so this shift from shallow selling to deep selling, I think is going to not just build tighter relationships with customers, but it's going to help customers win.
So I agree, and I think that notion of shallow selling is true to deep selling is true for the SMBs, and it's also true for the enterprises. And as enterprises coming out of COVID, they were wanting to dive into transformational opportunities. They were making all sorts of commitments, which they haven't been able to consume. And what you're seeing now is it's that real focus on value. What's the value that I'm going to get from this service, from this product? And how quickly can I get to that value? And I think when you focus on value, you can really think about, you can rotate then about whether the demand is through cost reduction, or whether it's through transformation, or whether it's through customer experience. But that value is the key anchor, and that need to be deep, really have that deep relationship and have a deep sales mindset is so important if you want to get to value.
Yeah, I would agree.
Well, I was just going to add on, I couldn't agree more. I think that the current environment, there's two things that are different. I think one is the macroeconomy. Scrutiny is higher, and a lot of companies are growing not by as much of a focus on new business acquisition, but by really growing the relationships with the customers that they have. And that means new parts of the organization that they have to build a relationship with. And the other thing that's going on is that the number of people that are involved in any decision has gone way up. It's not just selling to the highest executive that'll talk to you. It's what does the CFO think? It's what does the technical team think? It's how do we get everyone on board to make change in the midst of a complicated and uncertain time? And so deep selling to me is about not just breaking into new customers, but about expanding the relationships you have with customers and building all of the relationships that you need to help galvanize an organization to do something differently.
Yeah. Now I'm going to take you a bit away from the deep sales, and we're going to come right back to that. But I'd love to hear your perspective as you think about generative AI. How do you think that's going to transform sales?
Well, I just think this is so exciting. Sorry, I'm sitting up already, because you think about Gen AI, you think about the opportunity it creates to create agile real-time campaigns. Campaigns were kind of this thing that sat in the back of an organization, and clever people poured over data and product and service, and they worked out what we thought the market could sell. And they gave them to sellers, and sellers went and sold them, and they gave some feedback, and if they were lucky, they would get something tweaked. And actually now a seller goes and has a conversation with a customer, and they get immediate feedback, and they suddenly identify a problem or a value in the morning that they hadn't even recognized before. And with generative AI, they can put some more data back into the tool, and in the afternoon they can have rotated the campaign into something real time and opened up new leads and new conversations. And I think you think about that rotation, you think about the opportunity to put into the hands of the sellers the way you shape those campaigns, and that you can shape them real time. That's super exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't be more excited, just as much as you are. I think all of us can remember the first experience we had with generative AI that helped us imagine a future that we never thought was possible. About a year ago, being part of Microsoft, we saw an early preview of some of the models that were about to come out, and it blew our minds. I mean, and it allowed us to put in place a roadmap that really envisioned a completely new way to think about our products. And we're going to start rolling out those capabilities. We're doing some this week. We're going to do some in the coming quarters. But it really allows you to reimagine selling and so many different parts of business. But I think the hard part right now is figuring out what's promise and what's reality in the current moment. There's so much that's going to change, but what changes now and what might happen in the future? And so I have sort of four thoughts. I think the first thing is that there is no question that there is all of this information that sellers have access to in Outlook, in other communication tools, that needs to find its way into CRM that no seller wants to do. I mean, it's literally the least favorite thing that sellers have to do is to track all their activity. And so I think Microsoft's actually doing a really interesting job of using AI through Sales Copilot to bring that intelligence into CRM. So I think that's going to work. I think that's an out-of-the-box success story for companies. So that's one. I think the second thing is that we're going to quickly realize that AI is better at writing messages to customers than most sellers are. Not all sellers. Some sellers are exceptional at this. But if you're new in your career, if you're new to the industry, you don't speak the language of your customer, AI is going to be better. And this is something I think LinkedIn's going to be quite good at, because we have a lot of knowledge about who you're trying to talk to. And so we can craft a message that makes sense for that audience. So that's second. The third one is chat. chat is going to get way better. We think about chat as this kind of secondary thing that you use for certain low-level support cases. Chat is going to get so good that it's going to become a channel to help so many of our users and our customers get more value out of our products. And you know that when you create value for a customer, it gives you the chance to ask for something or show them something new, a new feature they haven't used, turn on a new capability, buy another seat, explore a new product. So I think chat's going to work. And I think the last thing is that every seller is going to have to learn how to be great at AI. There's this great analogy that one of our product leaders shared with me of, I don't know if it was in the 70s, but there was this year when a new pole vault was invented that used aluminum versus whatever they were using before. And literally everyone got 2 feet better in their pole vault. So whether you were going to win and be competitive in the pole vault only had to do with whether you're using this new technology. It was all the difference in the world. And so I think AI is going to feel like that. The most distinguishing feature for the best sellers will be, can they apply AI to make their make themselves better? And you know what's interesting is I think some people are concerned that is AI going to reduce jobs in sales? Is it going to automate sales? And the question I ask is, imagine for a second that every seller on your team was 30% more effective. Now, do you want more sellers or fewer sellers? And if you have opportunity in front of you, you're going to want to double down. So I think it's going to be a really exciting time, but I think it's also going to require sellers to learn how to use these technologies really effectively.
And I think that when you think about that learn and that adoption, the pace is such an important point on this conversation, because the pace of change and the pace of adoption, they need to stay in line. And actually, even today, sellers need to be able to use AI to pull together just the profile and the information for the customer that they're going to go visit. And then the layers of sophistication that you're going to quickly be able to start building into that to have a more rounded view of the customer you're going to go and see. Even if it's a long-lasting relationship, if you think about it, people change, organizations change. So even if this person is somebody you've known a long time, their role has changed, their role has broadened, their boss has changed, their level of influence has changed. Actually knowing all of that ahead of the meeting, think how valuable that is. Well, that data is available today, and being able to pull that today, that's an imperative for today. So anybody who's sort of listening to this and is thinking, actually, I don't need to worry about AI as a seller today, you need to be there today. Some of the other things that we've talked about here, they may be a few weeks, months away, but you know, this is happening today. This isn't something for the future.
And it moves very quickly, right, from a technology standpoint. So you don't want to be left behind as it relates to AI and being agile and understanding how to deliver customer value. So I'd love to take us back to deep sales. You already started talking about it, and I love the nuggets that you shared. So share with me, why are you a believer in deep sales? And a bit of context, if you have some, to share how it's benefited your organization.
So if I start, so for Accenture, 99 of our top 100 clients, customers, have been customers of ours for more than 10 years. You don't stay a long-time customer in a relationship like that unless you're really focused on building a long-lasting relationship and really focusing on how you're driving value for that client all the time. And that means that you can go through the peaks and troughs of the relationship. It's like any relationship, but you have to manage through. To do that, the way to do that is to focus on helping the client navigate the path that's ahead of them, understanding the depth of the relationship, the challenges, how they can get to the value quicker. So how you can bring, so for us as a professional services organization, how we can bring the right value to our clients consistently. And of course, we're going to have hiccups and problems along the way, but there is the importance for us as to why deep sales is so important. I think the thing that we're getting to here in this conversation is, how do you do that in a way that you can consistently deliver value and stay ahead of your competitors? Because everybody wants to be like you. You know, it doesn't matter what field you're in, somebody's going to be nipping at your heels if you think you're leading. And so then it's about really having the pace to unlock the tools available to you to continue moving forward. And I think this is really important. And I think when we think about some of the work that Accenture's done with LinkedIn and really partnering together to think about how we can pull together to provide more intel on the people, understand where those influences are changing, and then also combine that with our knowledge of industry. We really focus on pulling the knowledge of the client, the industry they're executing in, the socioeconomic factors that are affecting it, how you pull all that into really helping the client navigate what is ultimately pretty choppy waters right now. And that's why deep sales is absolutely fundamental to how we execute.
Great.
Yeah, I mean, we've been thrilled with the partnership with Accenture, so thank you for sharing a bit about that. And I think it's a good example of the idea that great sales is about the right conversations with people that matter. And I think we probably need to up our game in terms of what is the right conversation and who matters. The old idea that finding the senior executive that is related to your area, for selling a piece of sales technology, that you got to talk to the head of sales. That head of sales is going to go into a room and look around the room at 15 different people and see if his team or her team is on board with ever change you're thinking about doing. And so if you think that the path to a successful sale is through that person alone, you're completely misguided. I have this vision of this scene in Moneyball. I don't know if you've
Yes.
seen the movie Moneyball,
Yes.
but there's this great scene where Billy Beane, that Brad Pitt character, goes in and tries to make a trade, and the coach of the Cleveland Indians looks around the room and sees Jonah Hill, and he's kind of trying to figure out what Jonah's perspective is on this deal. And Brad Pitt is, how is this person that no one's ever heard of influencing this trade that I want to make? And it's basically leading it to being a no-go. And so many customer decisions are like that. And most sellers don't have a view of who those right people are. And so I think the first question is, how do you expand your knowledge of who matters? Who's the ultimate decision maker? Who are the key influencers? And increasingly, can I figure out who on the inside of my customer has a positive opinion of me because they used to be a customer, because they're an alumni of my organization? We call these folks hidden allies. Right. And those people can often draw you a roadmap of, well, here are the topics at play, and here are the people that are going to be part of the decision, and this is how you might want to think about making the right case. And so deep selling to me is about mapping out those hidden allies, mapping out the decision makers and influencers, and then having enough knowledge of the customer and the problem that they're going through to put your best foot forward. But this historic idea of throwing out a cold message to a senior exec, hoping they reply, and then taking them to, some venue where you're going to wine and dine them or do the golf. I mean, it's just it's just not how business happens anymore. And if you think about Accenture, I mean, you're talking about huge transformational efforts. You got to sell the board, you got to sell the company. It's a lot of people to bring into that thought. And the question is, do you have the tools in place to figure out who those folks are?
Yeah, no, I think that makes a lot of sense. And I think about Accenture, so they're part of our global accounts organization. So thank you again for the partnering with us. But what really stood out to me as we were going through the sales process is at the ethos of what Accenture was sharing with us is customer love. That was like a category. I know there were probably different ways that is signified within the organization, but it really is understanding the customer at a level where you can go deep and wide in that organization. And what you're sharing around how important that is to you and the transformational projects really stood out, and it resonates now with the examples. So Emma, I'm gonna ask you to go a click deeper maybe with that. As it relates to thinking about relationships, what are some of the things that you see sellers or those within the organization really do that stands out?
So I think very simply, the way I think about selling today, it's about the relationship powered by the data. It's understanding who you're talking to, what their sphere of influence is, what their role is, so what's important to them, what's their value, and how does that play into the broader value, if it's a big transformational deal or opportunity, across the whole organization. So if I had to boil it down, it's relationship powered by data to allow you to understand the value and understand how to sell.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great, and distilling down as we think about deep sales, right? So that was the original start to the question. And when we think about that, it really is understanding that white space. So where's the opportunity at your accounts? But then also, what are the relationships that make it an easier path for you to be able to get to that opportunity? And so It sounds like that is in the ethos, how Accenture has been leaning in and a way that deep sales is resonating in your organization.
Absolutely,
yeah,
very much so.
And then Dan, from your perspective, thinking about your role leading the sales organization at LinkedIn, what are some areas where you're seeing it come through with sellers in some of the conversations with customers that you're having?
Yeah, I mean, so much of great selling is about the right habits. And I think that there are a couple simple habits that make a lot of the difference. I think the first is, do you do the hard work to figure out who is going to help you map out the customer? And about Accenture has hundreds of thousands of alumni that love Accenture that now are working at the Global 2000. Those are huge assets from a relationship perspective for Accenture. And so the best sellers at Accenture, best sellers at LinkedIn, start with those people to figure out how to build that relationship. So I think this idea of mapping out the customer and multi-threading into the customer is very simple, but it's really effective. And then the second point, coming back to Emma's idea, is preparation. Do you do the hard work before you get in the room to have something new to say, to have an opinion, and to come in with curiosity? So I think the balance of the best sellers is to come in with a point of view, but to be open to hearing something in front of the customer that changes the direction you go in. And the world's best relationship builders have that mix of listening intently, but having a point of view. And when that comes together with the customer, magic happens.
Yeah, and I think from weaving in the AI piece to the deep sales, as you think about technology, it's going to augment and help sellers, but it's never going to replace that level of customer intimacy, understanding your customer so you can really go deep and expand within the relationships. I think this is like great dialogue of how the two worlds can kind of mold together.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that relationship piece is the absolute key. But I think with the data, with the technology, we have this opportunity to map these relationships out at pace, to understand the key buying values, the key value, and the key buying principles, if you like. But also it's about understanding the role, because we have a selling team. It's rarely just an individual. And it's a team, and understanding the different roles you can all play to provoke, to question. But to do that, everybody needs to listen. But to do that breadth and depth, you all need to understand the relationships that you have. You need to understand that relationship map, who's got the influence, and of course, understand the challenges that your customer's facing, and where the value is going to sit for them. And when you can do that, then magic happens, but it all starts with that relationship. That relationship is key, but the technology is helping those relationships be more informed.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think that one of the things that we spend a lot of time talking about at LinkedIn, and I think the best sales methodologies tend to really imbue, is that when you're early in your selling career, you think that what you're supposed to be talking about is the solution. But actually, the deals are won by understanding the problem, and that's where customers feel seen and heard. And if you can help them give words to the challenges they're facing, then that is where they will think that you are the person to show them the way. And I think that the context that you talked about, that the best sellers bring into that discussion, makes all the difference.
So when you think about revenue leaders that may be watching this broadcast and they're thinking, I'll just wait. Let me wait and see. What would be your advice to individuals that maybe are waiting to see how AI and deep sales plays out?
My advice is not to wait. It's here today. So don't wait, because it's here today. And every day that you're not starting to use it, your competitors are getting ahead of you. And I really think it's that simple. And that the data, the technology, it helps put you into the shoes of your customer. If you can be in the shoes of your customer, then you can listen, you can provoke, you can offer them nuggets of wisdom, but you can also challenge them. And when you do all of those things, then that relationship gets deeper, and you have the ability to unlock more value, to sell more. And I think that's where this comes. And the more that you can be informed, the better you're in the position for that.
Dan, what about you?
So what are you waiting for? I mean, the people that learn and take some bumps and bruises today are the ones that are going to win tomorrow. And I think we've seen that with every technology. The people that start, they don't get it right on day one, but they get it right on day two, and they tend to be ahead when it's the end of the race. So I think that getting going is probably the right decision.
I agree. Well, that's all the time that we have today. Thank you, Emma and Dan, for sharing your perspectives. Now back to you, Sahar.
Thank you. Well, just wow. There were so many nuggets in that conversation. A special thank you to Dan and Emma for sharing your wisdom and insights you've gleaned not only by working with your customers, but also within your own organizations.